Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. John Bailey first.
Bill Carlos, Second Ward.
Michael Safone, Fourth Ward.
Joseph Lepore, Fifth Ward.
Ann Schurshin, Sixth Ward.
Todd Tancredi, Supervisor.
Felicia Salvatore, Town Clerk.
Jim Nelson, attorney for the town.
Okay, we have two items on our agenda tonight, so we'll get right to it. The first one is a discussion regarding 535 Haight Avenue. Director of Development Neil Wilson is here, so I'll let him explain to you the problem and how we propose to solve it.
Okay. Neil Wilson, Town Development Director. Good evening. With me tonight is Eric Nyler from Tinkleman Associates. They are working for a Popeyes franchisee who is interested in taking over the old Woodstock Chicken / Nellie Kelly's, which has frontage on both Main Street as well as Haight Avenue. One of the challenges is Popeyes appears to be a heavily drive-through dependent type of franchise. And the question is how to get that to work. The original Woodstock Chicken, it's been a number of years since it was closed. I don't recall that there were particular issues with stacking and queuing for cars, either coming into the site or sort of backing out into either Main Street or onto the arterial. But that is a concern for the Popeyes, just because it is a national franchisee, and which is the concern. But we also have two approaches, one from Main Street and one from Haight Avenue. And we've been working with Eric on trying to come up with a configuration that addresses our concern. And keep in mind, too, that this application, assuming this board agrees, will go forward, will end up being reviewed as well by New York State DOT. They are equally going to be concerned with potential backup out onto Haight Avenue. I think most of us may remember the situation up in Hyde Park with the former Dunkin' Donuts, where they had a very short queuing line, and you literally had southbound Route 9 as the queue lane. First thing in the morning, it was quite the mess until they built a new store. But Eric is here to describe the proposed solution and the circulation to accommodate the drive, as well as some of the other site changes. Now, going forward, again, this is just a discussion matter. You may recall a couple of months ago, the board adopted a Main Street drive-through overlay zone, which needs to be put on the property in order for the project to go forward to allow for the drive-through, because we don't allow drive-throughs in the Arlington Town Center. We had something similar on the books a few years ago that was repealed. The newer version is slightly modified to account for properties like this that have frontage on Main Street as well as Haight Avenue. But again, this is sort of the kickoff for discussion. If the board is reasonably satisfied with the configuration tonight, or if you want to see something different, Eric is looking for some feedback. They'd like to get the project, going forward, but obviously this board needs to be satisfied with it. And like the other projects that involve overlay zones, the process going forward would be an application to the town board for the overlay zone, a simultaneous application to the planning board for site plan review, and we would run those concurrently. But I'll turn it over to Eric for the details.
All right.
Thank you, Neil. I'm here with Ed Botch. It's my representative from the franchisee. And if you'd like, I'll just walk you through the site plan.
Sure. There's a cordless mic here. If you just hit switch it on and wait 10 seconds or so, it should power up.
Eric, you may want to pull that forward a little bit.
You may be spared my wrap because it's not working. What we're looking at is the existing the existing Nellie Kelly's building, located here, fronting on Haight Avenue. And the general concept of the building is we're going to leave the footprint of the building, we're going to gut the inside to turn it into new Popeyes, and we're going to restyle the outside of the building. And we'll get to that as part of our site plan approval, but we understand the need for blending the Popeyes, sort of iconic look with the nature of the neighborhood.
I hate to interrupt you, but until we get a new battery for the mic, you'll have to speak into the, yeah, you'll have to, just so we can get you on the,
Yeah,
you know, the
sure,
public
okay.
can hear it
Yeah,
on
sure.
TV.
Should I start
If
over
you
for that
would,
reason?
thanks.
Yeah, okay. So let me just walk you through the basic concept of the project. The existing Nellie Kelly's building, which fronts onto Haight Avenue, we're going to be gutting
Perfect, thanks, Felicia.
We're going to gut the inside of the building
There you go.
and fit it up as a new Popeyes. We'll be yeah, thanks.
Now you have two mics. Who don't have any, they have two.
That's good. So we're gonna gut the inside of the restaurant and fit it out as a new Popeyes.
Thanks, Mark.
And we're going to restyle the exterior of the building. We're not going to alter the footprint other than maybe a jog here and there to attain some of the massing ideas that are typical of the Popeyes restaurants. We're going to leave, for the most part, intact the landscaping areas, and we're going to replant them as necessary to keep the general proportion of landscaping to hardscape. We're going to put a new sidewalk that will tie the building to the sidewalk on Haight Avenue. And we'll have a new crosswalk with a curb ramp, drop curb and curb ramp that takes you up from the handicap space into the front of the building. So parking is going to remain pretty much where it is now, which is stacked along the east side of the site. We're also able to carve out a couple of new spaces on the west side. We are going to remove if you're familiar with the site, there's a trash enclosure here which is going away. It's kind of unsightly. We're going to remove that and make a new enclosed trash staggered 2 6-yarders, which is what the operator needs to function effectively. And we've got that set up so it can be driven in, picked up, backed out, and leave on Haight. We've got the other main element of this, as Neil stated, was figuring out the drive-through sensitive to the concerns of the town. And the way we've accommodated that is we have one pickup window, but we have 2 drive-through ordering queues. So one queue is entered from Main Street, and one queue, the main queue, or we think it will be because of the volume of traffic on Haight relative to that on Main, will come in from Haight, and that queue wraps around pickup windows here. So we actually have 10 cars. I didn't show every car just for clarity, but we have 10 cars from pulling onto our property around to the pickup window on Q1. That's kind of an important point because in speaking to my traffic engineer, Phil Greeley from Mazer, he informs me that the standard of measure for drive-through queues, which in fact you literally don't have one here, but a standard way to measure is from the pickup window to the end of the queue. And Dunkin' Donuts, for example, which is a much more intensive use because of the coffee cycling time and just the nature of their business, likes to have 12 cars in their queue. So we have close to what Dunkin' Donuts would provide in a much less intensive use environment. In addition to which, we have this entirely second queue and the ability to pull out of Q1 and get into Q2. So if there is some kind of, if someone gets impatient, they can move into Q2. So between Q2 and Q1, we have a total of 19 cars stacking space available. Now, Mr. Baksh has provided me with some pretty good data on their cycle time. Our cover letter mentioned some other stuff that Eric had asked me for, which was average number of cars in a queue at other local locations. So, for example, we were able to determine that the Newburgh store, which is operated by your operation, has typically 5 cars in their queue at peak times. So we've got huge capacity for that type of load. But in addition to that, which I just got this today, looks like they generally figure they have about 12 cars per hour in their drive-through. And the cycle time is typically 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. So we've got a lot of ability to handle a lot of cars here. We've also got ample parking for the I guess it's like about 40% of your business, like 60% I guess is drive-through, and the other 40% is I'm sorry, 70 is takeout, 60% of that is drive-through, and then the balance is you've got people coming in and sitting down to eat. So we've got typically at the Newburgh store, they're only using maybe 14 spaces at their peak time. We've got 22 spaces. The actual statute would require 10 per thousand. We've got 2,200 square feet, so we would need 23 spaces. We've actually got 22. So we're very close, and we've got well beyond what we're actually going to need based on actual usage. Circling back to something that Phil Greeley had told me was that, again, we've got a lot of capacity by the standards, but he said to me that that's all trumped by actual experience and, sort of anecdotal evidence of a given store or stores. And so I would refer you back to this information here where I believe we've adequately or sort of beyond adequately designed the capacity to handle the kind of car loads we're looking to see. We're going to be restriping and repaving. We'll have new site lighting, zero cutoff, poly-LED fixtures. Going to use existing locations as much as possible. We'll have a new monument sign, probably out here on the front of the building. There is an existing sign here, which I haven't really gotten into signage with Sarah Davis yet, but we may look for it to be grandfathered in and maybe make use of that if that's a possibility. I think the Arlington Center standard for signage is 1 sign per building, so we understand that, but when we get to that point, maybe we'll try to take that a little further. And maybe I'll stop talking and see if anyone has any questions.
It looks like in the queuing line off Haight Avenue, if there were 10 cars queued up so that, you couldn't get into the first queue line, it looks like it's one way in off Haight, and there's a second, you can get to the second queue line from there.
That's exactly right. Until you get to, this is striping, so, and this we think would be striping as well. So until you get to about here, you can jump over to the other queue if you needed to.
I mean, I agree with, I think I'm going to call it the non-drive-through and the drive-through because apparently on the left side here, there's going to be, it's very narrow for both cars coming out on Haight Avenue. What I would do possibly use the non-drive-through to come out on Main Street and just let the cars that were going through the drive-through come out through Haight Avenue. Because you're going to find a congestion of cars on the side, and it's pretty narrow looking at it.
That's kind of what we have, if I'm following you. This is one, it turns into 2 lanes, but the throat here on the entrance off Haight would be one, and then immediately you would be able to split off and someone could come up here and find their way into a parking space.
Yeah.
But if you leave onto Haight Avenue, you must go through the drive-through. Now, there is
Right. That's what I was talking about. I'm saying that I would eliminate the people that were just going into the restaurant and not coming into the Haight Avenue.
When you say eliminate, I mean, anyone who wants to
Just
go into
let
the
them go
restaurant
out
will have
to Main Street.
Yeah, they'll probably have to, because you'll come in, it's two-way, it's really only two-way above here, right? So you'll come in, this is essentially one way here, it's 2 lanes, one way, so you'll park, and then when you want to leave, you'll go out this way.
Yeah.
But you have it going out around the drive-through and coming out.
Well, the drive-through comes out around on the 8.
Yeah,
Get that.
yeah, because it's.
Oh, you've got
I mean, I know it's premature, but I mean, the way it looks, it's too.
Oh,
congested.
no, that's the escape lane. That's in case something goes wrong and you change your mind and you just leave.
Right.
That's the escape lane.
But who's going to be there to watch it?
I mean, if there's really not enough, if there's people in the drive-through, I don't see somebody queuing up to try to get out waiting for those cars. If there's no one there, I suppose they could do that. You know, I'm probably guilty of if I'm trying to get out of a plaza and there's a bank and there's a drive-through and either it's the weekend or there's no one there, you know, I'll sneak through there to exit a plaza. But if there's cars in the queued up at the drive-through or the window, I'm not going to try to get out that way because there's no way out.
I think most people are going to take the path of least resistance, and they're going to exit onto Main, because it's simpler to keep going than to do what you're saying, you know, identifying. You'd have to go through the drive-through, and then if there are cars, you got to, you know, there's going to be a negotiation between the guy in the escape lane and the guy at the pickup window as to who gets to go first.
Are you thinking about any outdoor seating in the front?
Yes, we are. It's actually part of a plan to make the restaurant fit into the neighborhood. So there's an outdoor seating area that we're proposing here.
Okay.
So it'll be kind of it'll feel friendly and open to the to the neighborhood.
Okay.
How many seats inside for seating area?
Well, potentially 46, but I think that's the goal. I think there's potential. It might be 35. That's
What about the grease trap? Are you going to replace a new grease trap or bigger grease trap for that?
The grease trap, as far as I know, is sized appropriately for this building, so we'd be leaving it. And cleaning it out, obviously, and making sure it's functioning properly.
That was updated for the Nellie Kellys.
Okay. I have a question. How many parking spots is this project allowed? It's got 20 parking spaces, right?
Actually got 22. By the zoning, it would be 10 per 1,000 for a fast food. So that would make it 22.5, call it 23.
You only have one handicap parking here.
Yeah, that's correct. 1 for 25 is what the New York State Building Code requires.
So how many parking allowed to have on this project for this restaurant? How many parking space?
When you say allowed,
How many do you need? Required to.
that would be the 23.
23.
So we have 22.
Because it's going to be like a congestion coming in, because let's say if I'm parking out from 19 parking space, it's going to be a traffic jam right there coming out. I just don't see.
So where do you want to put the handicap? You want to put it, I mean, these are planning issues, number one, and I know you know this, but the planning board will address these issues, but if.
Just to save time.
For discussion, so if you don't put it there, you're going to have a handicap spot further away from the door and a handicapped person traveling further to get to the door.
Well, I was going to put it by the 17, which is right where the entrance is.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's actually not where the entrance is.
Well, yeah.
We don't want to, we prefer not to move it up here because it starts to cross the drive-through lane.
Cross traffic.
Yeah.
So this feels like the safest spot. It's also closer to the main entrance of the building, which I think is the right signal to send. And it's also 2 car lengths back from someone pulling in, so we feel like it's safe. Someone pulling off of Hay can see someone in the crosswalk and have ample time to stop.
One short question. On the exit onto Haight, number 19 shows a lined area, and it looks like it narrows it down to 1 car out?
Yeah, I was gonna fill this in so it sort of requires that people don't jockey for position all the way out. If that's what you're talking about, the little hatching here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Traffic calming measure?
But wouldn't it make better sense to allow 2 cars to go out?
No, I think
No?
that would lead to potential trouble, but
Okay.
we could explore that, but I would.
If you have 2 cars
Prefer to
trying to exit,
have it dictated that it's one at a time.
Calm down.
And where are the actual orders going to be placed? Where is that on
Well, there's
both
a-
queue lines?
If you can see, there's these 2 little dotted lines, these angled lines.
Oh, right here?
Yeah, so. Yes, exactly. This is the pre-menu board, and this is the menu board. and this is the pickup window.
Okay. And then this here would be for the other lane? Oh, here and
Exactly.
here?
Yes, correct. There's a canopy over, this is where you actually
Yeah.
lean into the speaker.
Okay,
So there's a, it's sheltered.
Can only go to.
Yep.
And, but there's a set distance that these are to be apart based on Popeye's,
good.
operational
yeah,
experience.
because we just, in the area, just got our first double queue at McDonald's, and it seems to work really well, which surprises me. My husband only got the wrong order once. Yeah, yeah. So are you familiar, do you have this at your other restaurants where you have two queue lines?
We do in most of our areas that are congested, that we don't have a lot of real estate to build the larger sites on. We do have the two queue lines, and it seems to work really well. The traffic flow
Yeah,
is much
and
better.
people seem to go automatically to both. They see, instead of being in line, they tend to go to the other one. It seems to go very smoothly. And if you don't get too much traffic off of Main Street, this could go really well. So, are you expecting a lot off of Main Street? Probably, primarily off of Hague, I would
I think
imagine.
it's going to be primarily based on
Yeah.
the, I don't have it by heart, but I think the disparity in volume
Yeah.
from what Eric had told me. And just experientially, our office is in the neighborhood, and I'm over here from time to time, and certainly there's a lot more traffic on 8. But on the other hand, I think, again, with the capacity we have, it wouldn't be necessarily a bad thing if more people were coming off of Main. It's moving slower.
Yeah.
And people might
Oh, that's
start
true.
to do that for that reason.
That's very true. Because I think this is a really good fit for the area, and the Arlington Business Improvement District is very interested to see somebody come back into the site. So as long as we can work out a few of these issues.
We definitely want to do that.
What is the, you have a goal for, once you get your approvals, how long it's going to take you to build out the place and make the, changes to the building and exterior that you want to do?
On the average, it takes us 8 to 10 weeks.
Oh, that's it?
It's a pretty
So-
fast build out.
And you would think you'd be doing that even during the winter months without an issue?
With winter conditions, probably an extra 2 to 3 weeks, so I figured maybe 3 months winter
Okay.
conditions.
Okay, good.
And then if we wanted to see the outside.
Oh, yeah.
Again, we understand that we're going to be working closely to style the building to fit into the area, but this is where we'd kind of start with this because it's sort of their look, but we understand there's a need for pitched roofs and things like that that are more compatible with the somewhat quasi-residential quality of
Yeah.
parts of Haight.
And we'll do anything, whatever you want us to comply with. we'll be happy to
Good.
do.
Where's your closest restaurant other than this one?
Close one's probably about 15 miles away in Newburgh.
Okay. Anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Okay, second discussion item on our agenda tonight is discussing involving our rec fees and potentially a change with the way we are calculating those fees. Now, again, let Director Neil Wilson explain what we're thinking.
I was trying desperately over the last couple of days to get these, to get the materials I handed out tonight done, so I can get it to you before the meeting. But anyway, this is strictly for discussion at this point. As the board knows, we updated the subdivision application, or the subdivision recreation fees in 2005. We went from, I think, $3,500 a lot to $5,000, and it's been that way for quite some time. More recently, we updated the fee schedule so that $5,000 per unit now applies to multifamily, and that was a gap that was in our fee schedule because we're seeing more and more applications for multifamily, and we didn't have a fee that was set for those types of projects that were coming in through the site plan process, but didn't involve a subdivision of land. Just a little bit of history. The recreation fee is the only impact fee that's actually authorized under state statute, but it's also been on the books probably since about the 1930s. It wasn't until sometime in the late 80s that the legislature got around to updating the town law and village law and city law to allow for the collection of recreation fees for multifamily, where you didn't have a subdivision of land, but you had a site plan and potentially lots of, new residents coming in. And it's interesting, I handed out as a separate, just a sampling of some fee schedules from some other towns, town of Oyster, or Village of Oyster Bay, Airmont, Wappinger, Hyde Park, just to kind of give you an idea of what some other towns are doing. And I was actually, you can spend an awful lot of time online looking at what everybody's doing. There's simply too many towns, villages out there to really assess what everybody is doing. But I was really struck by just how many other municipalities don't assess recreation fees, specifically on multifamily. And that's something for them to address, but I was, in this day and age, I found it very interesting. Almost all of them assess a recreation fee through the subdivision process on new lots that are created. And those fees vary from $500 a lot in the sampling all the way up to $15,000 in the case of Oyster Bay. But kind of getting back to the point and the information that I've supplied you and the discussion in the memorandum, the concern that I have about the $5,000 per unit fee being assessed on the multifamily that we're now seeing coming through is it really makes no distinction whether the units that are being created consist of studio apartments, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. There's no distinction being made. And yet when you look at the statute that talks about a process by which municipalities are supposed to individually assess each of the projects that come before, the residential projects only, that come before them, we're supposed to make an individualized finding that we have a need for recreation space. The project cannot accommodate that space. In other words, we can't locate a park somewhere on the project site, and therefore we're going to collect a fee.
Right.
So when you look at the fee from a per capita standpoint, which is really what the statute is about, because it's supposed to be aimed at not what the units are generating in terms of recreation, but what the people who are dwelling in those units are generating in the way of recreation demand. So when you break it down and you start looking at the per capita, and I've talked with Tom Meyering, he actually indicated that he's they're a national recreation association that I guess the town is a part of or participates in. And he had very recently, back in August, provided them some updated information as to the town's O&M requirements, plus the capital expenditures that are made to maintain the parks that we have. And he supplied that information. In return, they provide us with sort of national averages so that we can kind of figure out, basically on the size of the municipality that we have, in terms of our population, how we are doing in terms of providing for ball fields and swimming pools and tennis courts and all the things that are recreation related. And he actually provided me, this is an older table. It's the first, it's Exhibit A. I didn't have a title for this. This came from Tom directly. And again, these are older numbers. These are supposed to be updated. It's possible that we might have an update to these numbers as early as next week. But when you go down, the first column you have the national median, then the Poughkeepsie need and the Poughkeepsie actual. So the Poughkeepsie actual is do we provide this particular recreation amenity or not? And when you kind of go down through it, we have no football fields. We are, looks like we're deficient, at least in terms of the national averages, in providing for soccer and field hockey regulation size fields. We have the smaller ones for the kids to play on, and we seem to be okay there. And you kind of work your way down through the various facilities here. But then the thing that struck me was under outdoor facilities, parkland acreage. That's just the total land area. I was just struck by we have a deficiency here against the national median of 152 acres. And the parkland, it's just the acreage. It doesn't really talk about what's on it, if anything. And we have parks in which, we just own land and people can walk and do whatever on it without necessarily having a ball field or other improvement on it. But when I looked at these figures, and then kind of taking a look at the fact that we've got a capital budget right this year, and I think it's pretty much held steady of $20,000 per year for the past couple of years for capital improvements, and that's in the recreation budget. It really only works out to about $100 per capita per resident. So, already we're kind of, sort of like, well, I think that the number needs to be a little bit higher, and so the question gets to be, you don't want to set your recreation fee number too low that you're not capturing what the real impact of new people coming in, but you also don't want to gouge, because when you start assessing fees that are too high, we're going to get legal challenges, and that's the other part of my concern. So what I've done is I provided you copies of the state statute, the enabling statute. There's a discussion paper here from the New York State Office of General Counsel, which is excellent. It really sort of lays out in layman's terms this idea that, at least for purposes of New York State, the assessment of what a recreation fee should be is left up to the municipality, but it's supposed to be roughly proportional to whatever the impact of new residents coming in would be on recreation facilities. And I think that that's important, because I spent a lot of time trying to get my arms around, is there a way to get to a number? And the answer is not really, because part of the answer lies in a decision of, let's say, the town board to make a purchase of a piece of property for recreation purposes or not. Where is that piece of property located? What is the per acreage number? All of a sudden, you've got these variables that come into play, and the effort sort of falls apart. But what I did realize is that we're roughly looking at a per capita cost range, and this is the last full paragraph of the memorandum, of somewhere between $500 to $1,500, with the midpoint being $1,000 on a per capita basis. So when I looked at what the multifamily units that were being built, Fairview Commons consists of 2-bedroom and 4-bedroom. The Dahlia project over on Violet Avenue is a senior project. There are going to be mostly 1-bedrooms with a smattering of 2s. I have a sneaky suspicion we may very well start to see projects that are going to bring in 1s and studio apartments. So now all of a sudden you're kind of looking at single occupancy types of situations, and it's really hard, in my mind, to justify a $5,000 per unit fee for one person. I think that the $5,000 per lot fee is defensible, because when you consider that, according to the last census, we have an average of 2.71 people per single-family unit, and that's the predominant unit. And those units are by and large, 3 bedrooms. Again, that data is provided here. And when you kind of realize that you've got families where you've got 5 people living in a 3-bedroom, or you've got 2 parents and 2 kids, you're coming up with this idea of rough proportionality, where a $5,000 per lot fee for a single family unit, which is likely to be a 3-bedroom, is probably about right, based on the costs and what have you that I've looked at. So what I'm really focusing on, and my recommendation, and I know this is a lot to sort of digest, and I do apologize for not getting this to you sooner, is the idea that we adjust our fee schedule to provide that for multifamily and 2-family dwellings, we assess the fee on a per bedroom basis, and at $1,000 per bedroom. And again, I think that provides, it's a defensible fee based on the information that I've given you, and I think it's ultimately fair based on the population that would be coming into these newer multifamily and 2-family units. They're not large families coming in by any means.
Two questions for you. On the current rate if we make the changes, say somebody wants to give us a large amount of land that really isn't very usable to us or to a lot of residents in the town, if we take the land, then the way this is written, the way the state law is written, is they don't have to pay any fees. Can we then choose how much land or prorate, what we could use so we can get something to benefit our parks?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And the statute doesn't say that if somebody gives you land, you can't collect a fee. It really depends on what it is that you're receiving in terms of the parkland. It's also important to keep in mind, too, that there's nothing in the statute that obligates a developer to dedicate recreation facilities to the town. The only thing it says is that they provide recreation amenities for the people of the project. Theoretically, then they could say, well, we keep it private. Most of them don't do that. They don't want the responsibility of maintaining these types of facilities. But let's say you have a project that comes in, a multifamily project, and there is a set aside of land. Somebody says, I want to give you this acreage, and I'll even build a ball field for you. Well, that's fine. But one of the things that has to be considered is if you've got a number of units that are set aside for seniors, they're not playing baseball. Mm-hmm. They're using other facilities here in the town.
That's my point. I want to make sure we address everybody's needs, not just that one project.
And that's actually, when you look at the language in the statute, it leaves it up to the municipality to make that assessment.
My second part of that question would be, I would rather have the town board make that determination instead of the planning board. Could we change that? Because it says here the planning board makes that change. The planning staff makes the judgment on that. I think if these projects are coming in, the town board should be making that decision.
Mr. Wilson's probably going to talk about supersession now. The reason I mention that, Mike, is that one of the cases he included for you has to do with this concept of supersession, which basically is how far can a town go when it runs directly into the language in a state law that is applicable throughout the state. And so I'm giving him time to think.
Yeah, actually, I've just very quickly, I flipped over to, I provided you a copy of its section 274A of the town law site plans. And I'm looking at paragraph 6, and this is, again, the section that we're really talking about, reservation of parkland and site plans containing residential units. And it says, before such authorized board may approve a site plan containing residential units, such site plan shall also show, when required by such board, a park or parks suitably located for playground and other recreational purposes. Getting back to your question, Mike, that language says to me that if the planning board, which is authorized under 210 of our code to approve site plans, gets a project in before it, it's the planning board that makes that determination. In other words, it doesn't come back to you. This language to me makes it very clear. I mean, not that I would necessarily invite you to do this, but if the town board wanted to assume the site plan approval authority, you could certainly do so, and then it would be your prerogative. But I don't think you want to spend your evenings doing site plan approvals.
No, not necessarily.
But I do think that the planning board equally shares your concerns, all of your concerns, and my concern that there be a proper assessment of recreational demand, because on the front end, we have a statutory obligation to make an individualized assessment to collect the fee in the first place. If we screw that up and somebody takes us to court, we may lose, and then we get nothing, or it may be remanded and we got to do the analysis in any event. But I do think that the planning board is equally as sensitive as you are to the question of being able to properly collect those fees. And it's not, and I'm not kind of downplaying the concern, but I have a lot of faith in the planning board.
So do I. It's just that sometimes these fees, somebody sees something as you're giving us an awful lot, they may forget there's other parts of the town that need to be addressed.
Right. No, I understand. Let me think about that going forward. But I mean, it's pretty clear to me, and in our code, the way it's set up, that it's the planning board that would make that determination. And I'm talking specifically about a reduction. And in fact, we have that very same request coming in on the Dahlia project. There are a number of on-site amenities that are being provided, recreational amenities. And one of the questions that the board has been asked to answer is, the applicant is looking for a reduction in the recreation fee, keeping in mind that right now it's $5,000 per unit, so it's worthwhile for him to ask the question. When he says, I'm providing for walking paths, I have got indoor recreation, I've got, programs that are specifically aimed at the seniors who are going to reside there. I've got, bocce courts and some of the other outdoor.
Those aren't helping anybody in the neighborhood, though.
Well, but again, the statute talks about meeting recreation demand for people on site. And so there's this kind of balance, and that's something that the planning board is going to have to kind of wrestle
Yeah,
with.
that's what I want to get away from, because that's great for the people who live there, but it doesn't help any of the neighbors. They're not going to go walk on that site. It's still private property, and they can't really gain access to it. And, they're still building and taking away. I mean, they may have kids that come visit, are going to use our parks down the street. We still should have something coming back.
No, absolutely. And I don't, I do not foresee a situation where the planning board would ever give a complete buy on a project. I don't see that happening.
No, Neil, because even if they do have some on-site, they're gonna go off-site. Even in the Dahlia project, there's no baseball field there, the comment you made before. Go on Wilbur Boulevard during the week, and the seniors play baseball, and they fill up every field there. I mean, so there are off-site things that they are gonna take in this, so to give a total buy would be, way out of the question.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably a gross overstatement on, my part about the lack of use of ball fields by seniors. They certainly do play, and you're absolutely right. I mean, all you gotta do,
they're more and more
middle of the week,
active.
they've got the tents set up and having a grand old time. But by and large, the seniors, and it really sort of depends on, where you are in that 60 to 90 or 100 age bracket. What are you using? What do you need? And what are you interested in recreation-wise? And that's always a very tough question to answer unless you're really looking at the specific project. And kind of getting back to Mike's comment or concern, there are on-site amenities, but there will certainly be off-site usage. We've got outdoor parks when the grandkids come over to play. Where are they taking? They're going to take them up the street to use the facilities, and that's fine. But it's all got to be paid for.
Yeah.
So.
We want to improve all our parks, not just one little sublot. Someone built, so.
Right. No, understood. Yeah. So I do not foresee a situation where the planning board would give complete relief. I don't see any, even if it's a subdivision. I don't see any subdivision, even with some halfway decent recreation facilities being constructed, being used solely by the residents and only by the residents. In other words, they aren't, heading off-site and using other town parks. I just don't see it. Okay. So, but I agree with you. So there needs to be a capture of some of those capital costs and put it into the trust fund.
Any other questions, comments?
So kind of going forward, if the board is in agreement, the fee schedule can be amended by resolution. You authorize yourselves to do that. If everybody is in agreement, personally, I'd like to get this done next week at your regular meeting.
Why doesn't everyone
Unless you
look
wanna
it
think about
over? Yeah, look it over. If you have questions, maybe we can send out an email. Next week, it might be, we'll see. I mean, everyone look it over, think about it. If you don't have issues with it, let Neil know. If you have questions or whatever, we certainly, if we get it on the agenda, would like to get it through without too much of an issue. But, take the opportunity now to check it out.
Right. And I do know Mike told me you were going to be out of town next week. I think Joe is out of town.
Yes.
So, again, I just want to, I'm a little nervous about it. We have some projects that I'm going to be looking to collect the fee as it currently stands. And
Okay.
I do think that an adjustment is necessary.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Be here next week. Joe won't be here next week.
He knows.
I don't
He said
believe
that.
so.
No, he won't be.
Yeah.
He's out.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
And that brings us to the end of our agenda. Do committee reports. Thanks, Neil. Finance,
Just that we started going over the budget, meeting with the department heads, and we're in that process right now. If anybody's got any input or something, feel free to call or email them over.
Okay. Fire advisory, I don't think there's anything there, is there, Jay? Government ops,
Nothing to report.
land use and planning,
Nothing to report, sorry.
personnel,
Nothing to report.
recreation,
Nothing to report this time. We'll have a meeting tomorrow.
senior citizens. Okay.
Nothing to report.
Technology and equipment,
Nothing to report.
infrastructure.
We've been meeting, but there's nothing to report coming out of the meeting yet.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules for a public comment on town issues.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone here would like to address the board? Doreen?
Councilman Safone, I think you were right to at least bring out the fact that you might have some concerns about the planning board and the fees, because I don't know if you remember, I don't have the date at the moment, but there was a situation a number of years ago where the town board had a resolution that you voted on and passed to tell the planning board that you would like to see rec fees paid for a particular project, and then the planning board did not collect the rec fees for that project, even though you had taken that vote. So, that is something to be concerned about. And I can provide you with the information if you'd like it. I can email it to you.
I think I remember who it was. so.
Okay. Well, it was the woods at Cliffdale. Okay, and then it's listed on the town's website, but in case people missed it, all the fire districts will be having their budget public hearings next week, because that's set by state law. They have to be held on Tuesday, October 20th. And the public hearing for the Arlington Fire District will be Tuesday, October 20th at 7:30 PM at the Red Oaks Mill Firehouse, 213 Vassar Road. And the notice is on the town's website for that, and I know that Fairview's is there also. I'm not sure about New Hamburg's, but they're all held on the 20th, just at different times, so.
Okay. Thanks, Doreen. Anyone else? Seeing no one, I make a motion to resume the rules.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Town board adjourns at 7:47 PM.